The stars burned cold against the black void, their distant light unable to warm the tension filling the bridge of the Sathrax patrol vessel. Vigilance. Captain Mara Keene stood rigid, her silver-scaled hands clasped behind her back as she studied the holographic display before her. The anomalous energy readings had persisted for 3 consecutive solar cycles, now growing stronger with each passing hour. "Lieutenant Solara, run the quantum signature analysis again," Mara ordered, her voice calm, despite the growing unease in her chest. "Captain, this is the 5th time," Solara replied, her delicate fingers dancing across the control panel. "The results remain consistent, massive antimatter signatures, moving in tactical formation along our outer border." Mara's 4-chambered heart quickened. In her 15 years of service to the Sathrax Alliance, she had never encountered anything like this. The energy patterns suggested vessels larger than anything in their fleet, yet they remained invisible to standard scanners, as if they were ghosts haunting the edges of known space. "Plot a probable course based on their movements," Mara commanded. The holographic display shifted, revealing a dozen red trajectories, converging on different points along the Alliance border. It was a classic encirclement strategy, one taught in every military academy, across the 7 core worlds of Sathrax. "This is not random," Mara whispered. "This is deliberate military." Lieutenant Solara looked up, her crystalline eyes, reflecting the red warning glyphs. "Captain, are you suggesting—" Mara nodded grimly. "Prepare a formal report for the War Council, Priority Alpha." 3 hours later, Mara stood before the semicircular table, where 9 high-ranking officials of the Sathrax Alliance regarded her with expressions ranging from amusement to annoyance. The Grand Chamber, with its ancient stone columns and modern holographic interfaces, represented the perfect blend of tradition and innovation that was the hallmark of their civilization. Captain Keene, General Lan Orat, spoke, his voice resonating through the chamber. "Your report suggests that these energy signatures might be human vessels." A ripple of laughter swept through the council. "Humans, really, Captain?" Mara remained stoic, her posture perfect. "The quantum signatures match no known species in our database. The formation patterns indicate military intention, and the energy output suggests technology far beyond our current capabilities. Humans are mythical creatures, Captain," Admiral Vex interjected, barely concealing his disdain. "They exist in children's comic books and ancient folklore. Next, you'll report seeing the Void Dragon or the Crystal Titans." More laughter followed. Mara felt her scales flush with heat, but she maintained her composure. "The facts remain, Admiral. Something is out there. Something powerful." General Orat leaned forward, his aged face severe. "Captain Keene, your service record is exemplary, but this report borders on fantasy. Humans have never existed outside of myths. They are imaginary creatures, symbolic representations of chaos, and primitive thinking that our ancestors created to explain the unexplainable." "With all due respect, General," Mara countered, "myths often contain kernels of historical truth. What if our ancestors encountered humans? What if those encounters were later dismissed as legend?" "Enough!" Orat's fist slammed onto the table. "You're dismissed, Captain. Return to your patrol duties and bring us real intelligence, not children's stories." Mara bowed stiffly and exited the chamber, her mind racing. The War Council's dismissal of her report didn't change the facts. Something was gathering at the borders of Sathrax space, and if the Council wouldn't investigate, she would. Back aboard the Vigilance, Mara called her most trusted officers to the briefing room. Lieutenant Solara entered first, followed by Chief Engineer Talon and Communications Specialist Adril, a slender, bookish officer whose expertise in linguistics and pattern recognition had proven invaluable on numerous occasions. "The Council rejected our report," Mara announced without preamble. "Unsurprising." Talon grumbled, his mechanical arm whirring softly as he crossed it over his biological one. "They've grown complacent after centuries of peace." "What are your orders, Captain?" Solara asked. Mara activated the holographic display showing the border region, where the anomalous readings were strongest. "We're going to gather more evidence, irrefutable evidence." "Captain." Adril spoke up, his voice soft but steady. "If these truly are humans, what exactly are we dealing with? The myths paint them as both brilliant and barbaric, capable of extraordinary technological leaps, alongside horrific self-destruction." "That's precisely what we need to find out," Mara replied. "Prepare the Vigilance for deep reconnaissance. We leave in 6 hours." "Captain," Solara cautioned, "this could be interpreted as insubordination." Mara's gaze hardened. "Then let it be. But I won't ignore a potential threat to the Alliance because it doesn't fit neatly into the Council's worldview." Under the cover of a routine patrol, the Vigilance slipped away from the main fleet and ventured toward the anomalous readings. For 3 days, they tracked the invisible energy signatures, pushing their sensors to maximum capacity. On the 4th day, they found something. "Captain, to the bridge." Solara's voice crackled through the communicator, jarring Mara from a rare moment of rest. When she arrived, the bridge was in controlled chaos. Officers worked frantically at their stations, while a large holographic display dominated the center of the room, showing a massive void in space, a perfect absence of stars. "What am I looking at?" Mara demanded. "Nothing," Solara replied, "and that's the problem. That section of space should contain visible stars and cosmic background radiation. Instead, we're detecting nothing, as if something is there blocking everything behind it." "A cloaking technology," Mara wondered aloud. "Far beyond anything in our technical understanding," Chief Engineer Talon confirmed, examining the readings. "It's not just bending light, it's creating a perfect absence." "Move us closer," Mara ordered. "Minimal power signature, passive sensors only." The Vigilance crept forward, its engines barely a whisper against the vacuum of space. As they approached the anomaly, tension grew thick on the bridge. Every officer felt it, the sense of crossing a threshold into the unknown. "Distance to anomaly, 200,000 kilometers," Solara reported. "Hold position," Mara commanded. "Adril, deploy the quantum resonance scanner. Let's see if we can penetrate whatever shield they're using." Adril worked quickly, his slender fingers adjusting the experimental scanner's parameters. "Activating quantum resonance pulse in 3, 2, 1. A silent wave of energy pulsed from the Vigilance, invisible to the naked eye, but designed to briefly disrupt any advanced cloaking technology. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, "Contact!" Solara shouted as alarms blared across the bridge. The nothing before them flickered, and for a split second, they glimpsed an enormous black vessel, sleek and predatory, its hull adorned with unfamiliar markings, most prominently the letters UNSF. "Capture that image," Mara ordered, but it was too late. The ship vanished again, and worse, it had detected them. "Energy spike," Talon warned. "They're powering weapons." "Evasive maneuvers," Mara commanded. "Get us out of here maximum speed." The Vigilance banked hard, its engines screaming as it fled. Behind them, space itself seemed to warp as something massive moved in pursuit. "Transmit everything we've recorded back to Alliance headquarters," Mara ordered Adril. "Encrypt it directly to General Orat's personal channel." "Captain, they're gaining," Solara reported, her voice tight with fear. A blinding flash of energy sliced through space mere kilometers from their port side, a warning shot that could have vaporized them instantly. "They're toying with us," Mara realized. "They could destroy us if they wanted to." Just as suddenly as it had begun, the pursuit ended. The energy signatures behind them receded, allowing the Vigilance to escape back toward Alliance space. The bridge crew sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just witnessed. "Did we transmit the image?" Mara finally asked. Adril nodded. "Yes, Captain, along with all sensor data." "Good," Mara said grimly. "Let's see the Council dismiss this as mythology." The emergency session of the War Council was a stark contrast to their previous meeting. Gone were the smirks and dismissive glances. Now the counselors leaned forward, their faces grave, as they studied the image of the black ship and the letters UNSF emblazoned on its hull. United Nations Space Fleet. Adral explained, standing beside Mara before the council. Based on my preliminary analysis of ancient linguistic patterns, that's the most likely translation of the acronym. United Nations, Admiral Vex repeated slowly. You're suggesting multiple human nations formed an alliance. A spacefaring alliance, Mara emphasized, with technology that surpasses our own. General Orat had been uncharacteristically silent during the presentation. Now he stood, his expression unreadable. Captain Keen, I owe you an apology. Your instincts were correct. Something is indeed gathering at our borders. The question is why, Mara responded. And why now, after all this time? Perhaps they've always been there, Adral suggested. Watching from the shadows. Perhaps it is we who have only now developed the capability to detect the faintest traces of their presence. Whatever the case, General Orat declared, we must gather more intelligence. Captain Keen, given your experience with this situation, I'm promoting you to the rank of Major. You will lead a specialized reconnaissance squadron to track these human vessels and determine their intentions. General, Mara acknowledged with a sharp nod, both surprised and gratified by the promotion. One more thing, Orat added. There's an abandoned Sathrax outpost near the border region, where the anomalies were first detected. It was decommissioned over a century ago, but its long-range sensors might still be operational. Investigate it. Perhaps it has been gathering data all this time. 3 days later, Major Mara Keen led a small fleet of 5 ships toward the abandoned outpost. The structure loomed before them, a skeletal remnant of Sathrax's early expansion era. Its once gleaming hull, now pitted and dull from centuries of cosmic radiation. Life support is minimal, Lieutenant Solara reported from her position at Mara's side. Auxiliary power only. The station appears to have initiated emergency protocols at some point. Any signs of forced entry or combat? Mara asked. Negative. It seems more like a controlled shutdown than an attack. Prepare a boarding team, Mara ordered. Full environmental suits. I'll lead them myself. Despite protest from her officers, Mara suited up alongside the boarding team. This mission was too important to delegate, and she needed to see with her own eyes what secrets the old outpost might hold. The docking procedure was tense, with the station's automated systems barely functional. Once aboard, Mara's team moved through corridors thick with floating dust particles, their helmet lights cutting sharp beams through the darkness. Central Command Center should be 2 levels up. Talon reported, consulting the ancient schematics they had recovered from Alliance archives. The journey through the abandoned station was eerie. Unlike the sleek, organic-inspired architecture of modern Sathrax vessels, this outpost featured angular metal corridors and mechanical systems that seemed crude by comparison. It was a physical reminder of how far their civilization had advanced and perhaps how much they had forgotten. When they reached the command center, they found it in surprisingly good condition. Emergency lighting cast a soft blue glow over banks of equipment. Check the main computer, Mara ordered. See if we can access its memory core. Talon went to work connecting their modern equipment to the outpost's ancient systems. After several tense minutes, the central holographic display flickered to life, bathing the room in a ghostly green light. I've got something, Talon announced. The long-range sensors have indeed been recording data all this time, powered by the emergency fusion cells. And look at this, regular entries at the edge of their range dating back over 200 years. 200 years, Mara echoed in disbelief. The humans have been at our borders for 2 centuries. Not just at our borders, Talon corrected, his voice hollow with shock. Look at this. The holographic display shifted, showing a 3-dimensional map of space, extending far beyond Alliance territory. Hundreds of red dots appeared, moving in complex patterns that, when viewed over time, revealed a sophisticated patrol network encompassing not just the border of Sathrax space, but encircling it entirely. "They've surrounded us," Lieutenant Solara whispered. "We're in a cage we never even knew existed." "There's more." Talon continued delving deeper into the station's records. "I've found a sealed data cache, heavily encrypted. It's marked with the highest classification level Omega Black." "Can you break it?" Mara asked. Talon shook his head. "Not here. We'll need to take it back to Alliance headquarters." Mara stared at the map, at the red dots that represented human ships, hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, patrolling in silent vigilance around Sathrak space for centuries. The implications were staggering. The humans weren't just real. They were organized, patient, and possessed technology that allowed them to remain virtually undetectable to the Alliance's most advanced sensors. "Download everything," she ordered. "Every byte of data this station has collected, then set charges. We're destroying it when we leave." "Major," Solara questioned. "Shouldn't we preserve it for further study? If the humans have known about this outpost for centuries and left it operational, it's because they wanted us to find this information eventually," Mara explained. "This is either a message or a trap. Either way, I don't want to leave anything behind that they might use to monitor our response." As her team worked to extract the data, Mara stood before the holographic display, studying the patterns of the human patrol ships. Their movements weren't random. They followed a complex algorithm that ensured maximum coverage with minimal resources. It was a masterclass in strategic deployment, one that spoke of a military mind, far more sophisticated than anything taught in Alliance academies. "Who are you?" she whispered to the red dots. "And what do you want from us?" 6 hours later, as their ships accelerated away from the outpost, Mara watched through the view screen as a series of controlled explosions reduced the ancient station to drifting debris. The destruction felt symbolic somehow, the final erasure of a piece of history that had been forgotten long before she was born. "Set course for Alliance headquarters," she ordered. "Maximum speed." Upon their return, the encrypted data cache became the center of a political storm within the Alliance leadership. Some counselors led by Admiral Vex argued that it should be destroyed without being opened, a position born of fear that its contents might destabilize Sathrak society. Others, including General Orat, insisted that knowledge, however uncomfortable, was always preferable to ignorance. After 3 days of heated debate, a compromise was reached. A small team of specialists, including Mara Adril and selected counselors, would review the data in a secure facility isolated from the Alliance's main network. The decryption process took another 2 days with the best Sathrak's cryptographers working in shifts. When they finally broke through, what they found shook the foundations of everything Mara had been taught about Sathrak's history. The cache contained historical records, scientific data, and diplomatic communications dating back over 500 years to a time when humans and Sathraks had not only known each other, but had been allies. "This can't be possible." Admiral Vex muttered, his usual confidence shattered as he stared at the evidence before them. "Our history makes no mention of humans as real beings, let alone as allies." "Someone erased them," Adril said quietly, his analytical mind racing to reconstruct the fragmented past. "Someone deliberately removed all evidence of human existence from our historical records, our databases, even our cultural memory, reducing them to myths and legends." "But why?" Mara demanded. "Why erase an entire species from our history?" General Orat had been unnaturally still as the revelations unfolded. Now, all eyes turned to him as he slowly stood, his ancient face a mask of controlled anguish. "Because of what we did to them," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The silence that followed was deafening. "General," Mara prompted. Orat's gaze remained fixed on the data display, unable to meet the eyes of those around him. "I was a young officer when the decision was made. We had fought alongside the humans against the Void Collective for decades. They were magnificent allies. Unpredictable, innovative, fierce beyond reason when protecting their own. But when the war ended, certain factions within our leadership became concerned. Concerned about what? Admiral Vex asked. Their growth rate, their adaptability, their sheer potential, Oret continued. Humans evolve faster than any species we had encountered, not just biologically, but culturally, technologically. They would surpass us within a few generations. Some already had. So a decision was made, to eliminate the threat before it fully materialized. Horror dawned on Mara's face. We tried to exterminate them. Orat nodded grimly. The attack was launched without warning. Billions died in the first strike. But we underestimated them badly. They had contingencies, hidden fleets, shelters built deep within moons and asteroids. They survived, regrouped, and counterattacked with a ferocity that nearly destroyed us. But our histories record no such war, Adril objected. Because it never officially ended, Orat explained. When it became clear that mutual destruction was the only outcome, a temporary ceasefire was negotiated. The humans withdrew to the borders of what had been their territory. We agreed not to pursue them. But the shame of what we had done, the betrayal of allies who had fought and died alongside us, was too much for our leaders to bear. So they erased the humans from our history. Mara concluded the pieces, finally falling into place. Made them into myths so that future generations would never know of our treachery. Or question why a vast region of space remained unexplored, declared off-limits for navigational hazards, Adril added. The perfect cover story. General Orat finally met Mara's gaze, his eyes heavy, with the burden of secrets carried for too long. I was ordered to oversee the purge of our historical records. It took decades to eliminate every reference, every image, every piece of data that proved humans existed. I told myself it was necessary for stability, for future generations to live without the shadow of that shame. And now they've returned, Mara said. Or perhaps they never truly left. They've been watching us all this time, patrolling the borders of that ceasefire line for centuries. The question is, why reveal themselves now? Adril wondered. Before anyone could answer, a priority alert sounded throughout the facility. Admiral Vex activated the communication panel, his expression darkening as he received the report. Human ships have been detected at multiple points along our border, he announced. Hundreds of them suddenly decloaking simultaneously. They're making no attempt to hide themselves now. Are they advancing? Mara asked, tension evident in her voice. No, they're holding position. But Major Keen, they're broadcasting a message, on all frequencies in our language. What does it say? General Oret demanded. 4 words we remember, do you? The War Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from every major world in the Alliance had assembled, along with military commanders, scientists, and historians. At the center of it all stood Mara, now hastily promoted to colonel, tasked with forming a response to the human fleet that continued to hold position along their borders. We cannot show weakness, Admiral Vex argued, his voice carrying across the chamber. These humans have been planning this moment for centuries. If they wanted peace, why surround us with warships? Perhaps because the last time they trusted us, we tried to annihilate them, Mara countered. Their show of force may simply be insurance against another betrayal. The debate raged for hours, with factions forming and reforming as new information came to light. Throughout it all, General Orat remained silent, the weight of his historical role visibly crushing him. Finally, First Counselor Zenthar, the highest civilian authority in the Alliance, raised her hand for silence. We have deliberated long enough. The humans have made the first move by revealing themselves. Now we must respond. Colonel Keen, as our foremost expert on this situation, what do you recommend? All eyes turned to Mara, who stood straight, her decision already made. We acknowledge the truth. We broadcast a response admitting our historical crime and expressing a desire for peaceful communication. And we do it openly to our own people, as well as to the humans. No more secrets. That could destabilize our entire society, Admiral Vex objected. Generations have been raised believing humans were mythical creatures. To suddenly announce they're real and that we once tried to exterminate them. Is the price we pay for centuries of deception, Mara finished firmly. Our society is strong enough to face the truth, however uncomfortable it may be. After another hour of heated discussion, a compromise was reached. A delegation would be sent to the border to establish direct communication with the human fleet, while a carefully worded announcement would be prepared for the Sathrax public, gradually introducing the reality of human existence. I volunteer to lead the delegation, Mara stated. As do I, Adril added, stepping forward. My expertise in linguistics and cultural analysis will be essential for proper communication. First Counselor Zenthar nodded. So be it. Colonel Keen, you will lead the delegation with Adril as your communications specialist. But understand the gravity of this mission. The future of our entire civilization may rest on what happens at that meeting. 3 days later, Mara stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel, Reconciliation. Watching, as they approached the designated meeting point, a neutral position along the ancient ceasefire line. Beside her, Adril worked tirelessly, analyzing the continued broadcasts from the human fleet for any linguistic nuances that might aid their communication. Are you nervous? Solara asked, having insisted on accompanying Mara despite the risks. Terrified, Mara admitted quietly. We're about to face a species with every reason to hate us, commanding technology that could obliterate our worlds if they chose. Yet they haven't, Adril pointed out, looking up from his work. In 500 years, they've had countless opportunities to attack. Instead, they've waited, watched, and now they're talking. Colonel, the pilot called out. We're approaching the designated coordinates. Human vessel detected directly ahead. Through the view screen, Mara watched as a sleek black ship materialized against the starfield. It was smaller than she had expected, not the massive warship they had glimpsed earlier, but clearly a diplomatic vessel, perhaps the equivalent of their own, Reconciliation. Open a channel, Mara ordered, straightening her formal uniform. Visual and audio. For a moment, there was only static. Then the view screen flickered and Mara found herself looking at a human for the first time in her life. The being before her was nothing like the monstrous caricatures from Sathrax children's stories. The human commander appeared calm and dignified, with dark skin and close-cropped silver hair. Facial features that should have been alien somehow seemed familiar. I am Captain Elena Kagawa of the United Nations, Space Fleet Diplomatic Corps. The human spoke, her voice clear and measured. On behalf of humanity, I greet the representatives of the Sathrax Alliance. Mara swallowed hard, acutely aware of the historical significance of this moment. I am Colonel Mara Keen of the Sathrax Alliance. With me is Cultural Specialist Adril. We come seeking peaceful dialogue. Captain Kagawa's expression remained neutral. After 5 centuries of silence, the Sathrax Alliance suddenly wishes to talk. Why now, Colonel? What has changed? We remembered, Mara replied simply. Or rather, we discovered what had been hidden from us. The truth about our shared history, and the terrible crime committed by our ancestors against humanity. Something shifted in Captain Kagawa's expression, a barely perceptible softening. You truly didn't know? No. Our leadership erased humans from our history, reducing you to myths and legends. Generations of Sathrax have grown up believing humans were fictional creatures. It was only when your ships began to appear on our sensors that we discovered the truth. Captain Kagawa seemed to consider this, consulting briefly with someone off-screen before returning her attention to Mara. We've prepared a secure facility on a neutral asteroid where our delegations can meet in person. Would you be willing to continue this conversation there, Colonel Keen? Mara glanced at Adril, who gave a subtle nod. We would be honored, Captain Kagawa. 2 hours later, Mara led a small delegation into the meeting facility, a surprisingly comfortable space with architecture that seemed deliberately designed to blend human and Sathrax aesthetic sensibilities. Captain Kagawa greeted them personally, along with her own team of diplomats and scientists. The initial conversations were cautious, laden with centuries of unspoken history. But as hours turned into days, a remarkable thing happened. Barriers began to fall. The humans, while never forgetting the past, seemed genuinely interested in building a different future. "Your people's attempt to erase us only made us stronger," Captain Kagawa explained during one session. "We were forced to innovate to develop technologies that could hide us from your sensors, while allowing us to monitor your development." "Why didn't you attack?" Mara asked the question that had been haunting her. "You clearly had the capability." "We debated it," Kagawa admitted frankly. "For generations after the betrayal, there were strong voices calling for retribution. But ultimately, we chose a different path. We decided to wait and watch, to see if Sathrak's society would evolve beyond the fear and arrogance that led to the attack." "And have we?" Adril asked quietly. Captain Kagawa's gaze moved between the Sathrak's delegates. "That remains to be seen. But the fact that you're here, that you chose truth over comfortable lies, it's a promising start." On the fifth day of negotiations, the human delegation presented evidence that stunned Mara and her team historical records, showing that humans and Sathraks had not merely been allies, but had begun the process of cultural and technological integration before the betrayal. Art, music, scientific theories, even early attempts at genetic compatibility research for mixed-species medical treatments. "We were becoming one civilization," Adril whispered, examining the records with wonder. "Not just allies against a common enemy, but partners in exploration and discovery." "Until fear destroyed it all," Mara added solemnly. Captain Kagawa nodded. "Fear is the enemy we never fully conquered, neither humans nor Sathraks. Fear of difference, fear of being surpassed, fear of the unknown." As the negotiations continued, reports from Alliance Space indicated growing unrest, as the truth about humans gradually spread throughout Sathrak society. Some worlds embraced the revelations with fascination and a desire for reconciliation. Others experienced protests with conservative factions, denouncing the human lie and calling for a return to traditional historical narratives. "Your society is experiencing cultural shock," Captain Kagawa observed, when Mara expressed concern about the reports. "It's to be expected. Your people are discovering that their understanding of history of themselves has been fundamentally altered." "Will your people accept reconciliation?" Mara asked. "After what we did?" "Some already do. Others never will," Kagawa answered honestly. "But the majority understand that holding on to ancient grudges serves no one. We've had 500 years to process what happened, to mourn our dead, and to decide what kind of future we want to build." On the 12th day, a breakthrough came in the form of a joint declaration, a document acknowledging the historical crimes, while establishing a framework for gradual re-engagement between the two civilizations. Border restrictions would be slowly eased, allowing for limited cultural and scientific exchanges. A truth commission would be established to fully document the shared history, ensuring it could never again be erased. As Mara prepared to return to Alliance Space with the agreement, Captain Kagawa requested a private word. "Colonel Keen," she began, once they were alone, "there's something you should know, something not included in the official negotiations." Mara tensed. "What is it?" "The reason we chose to reveal ourselves now after all these centuries," Kagawa explained, her expression grave. "We've detected something moving in from the galactic rim, something that makes our old conflict seem trivial by comparison." "The Void Collective," Mara asked, referencing the ancient enemy that humans and Sathraks had once fought together. Kagawa shook her head. "Something else. Something worse. Our long-range probes have detected massive energy signatures, unlike anything we've encountered before. Whatever it is, it's methodically consuming stars as it moves toward this sector of the galaxy." Mara felt a chill run through her. "How long do we have?" 50 years, perhaps less," Kagawa replied. "Not long enough for either of our civilizations to face it alone. But together..." "Together we might stand a chance," Mara finished the thought. Kagawa nodded. Exactly. Our scientists have already begun theoretical work on defensive technologies that would require both human innovation and Sathrak's energy manipulation capabilities. The joint research projects outlined in our agreement aren't just goodwill gestures, they're the foundation for what might become our shared salvation. Does your leadership expect me to keep this information from my government? Mara asked, troubled by the implications. Not at all. We want you to tell them, but carefully, strategically. Give your people time to adjust to our existence before burdening them with a new existential threat. The fear that drove your ancestors to betray us is the same fear that could prevent our civilizations from uniting when we most need to. Mara considered this, recognizing the wisdom in the approach. I understand, and I give you my word that I will work tirelessly for genuine reconciliation between our peoples. I believe you will, Kagawa said, extending her hand in what Mara recognized as a human gesture of agreement. Mara carefully took the offered hand, marveling at the warmth of the human skin against her own scaled palm. The simple touch seemed to bridge 5 centuries of separation in an instant. Upon returning to Alliance space, Mara delivered the agreement to the War Council, now expanded to include civilian leaders from across Sathrak society. The debate was intense, with Admiral Vex and his supporters arguing against any concessions to the humans. They surrounded us with warships and call it peace, Vex thundered. This agreement will allow them to infiltrate our society, influence our development, perhaps even prepare for the completion of what our ancestors feared, our replacement. Admiral, Mara countered, if the humans wanted to destroy us, they could have done so at any point in the past 5 centuries. Instead, they watched and waited, hoping we would evolve beyond the fear and prejudice that led to our betrayal. And have we? First Counselor Zenthar asked, echoing Adril's earlier question. Mara looked around the chamber at faces filled with uncertainty, fear, hope, and determination. That's what we must decide today: who we are, who we choose to be. After days of deliberation, the Council voted narrowly to ratify the agreement. The announcement was met with mixed reactions across Alliance space, but as weeks passed, curiosity began to overcome fear. The first cultural exchanges were established with human and Sathrak scholars, working together to reconstruct their shared history. 2 months after the initial contact, Mara stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, a newly constructed facility at the former border between human and Sathrak space. Beside her, Adril watched with barely contained excitement as the first civilian transport from Earth approached the docking bay. I never imagined I would live to see this day, he admitted. Humans and Sathraks meeting openly after 5 centuries of separation. This is just the beginning, Mara replied, her gaze fixed on the elegant human vessel. We have much to learn from each other and much to prepare for. She had briefed the Council on Captain Kagawa's warning about the approaching threat from the Galactic Rim. While some had dismissed it as a human ploy to accelerate integration, others recognized the strategic value of joint scientific research. Either way, the path forward was now clear. Sathraks and humanity would face the future together, whether that future held peace or peril. As the human visitors began to disembark, Mara spotted a familiar figure among them, Captain Kagawa, now serving as Earth's cultural ambassador to the Alliance. Colonel Keen, Kagawa, greeted her warmly. Or should I say General now? I heard about your promotion. Mara smiled still, adjusting to her new rank. The Council felt I should oversee our integration efforts personally. A wise choice, Kagawa replied. Someone who has seen both the truth of our past and the potential of our future. Together, they watched as humans and Sathraks cautiously interacted, some with formality, others with undisguised curiosity. Centuries of separation were beginning to end, one conversation at a time. Do you think we can truly rebuild what was lost? Mara asked quietly. Or will the shadow of betrayal always stand between us? History cannot be erased. Kagawa answered, no matter how thoroughly your ancestors tried, but it can be faced, acknowledged, and eventually transcended. She gestured toward a young human scientist, deep in conversation with a Sathrax engineer, their hands moving animatedly as they discussed some technical concept. Look at them already discovering shared passions, shared goals. Mara nodded, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. When I first detected your ships on our border, I feared I was witnessing the beginning of the end for my civilization. Instead, it may have been the beginning of its renewal. Perhaps for both our civilizations, Kagawa suggested. After all, the stars await us together this time. As more ships arrived from both human and Sathrax worlds, General Mara Keen stood at the threshold between past and future, watching as the myths of her childhood transformed into the reality of her present. The humans had returned not with the vengeance they had every right to claim, but with the wisdom that only centuries of patience could bring. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, something approached a challenge that would test this newborn alliance in ways neither civilization could yet imagine. But for now, in this moment of fragile reconciliation, there was hope. Hope that fear could be conquered. Hope that ancient wounds could heal. Hope that two peoples once divided by betrayal might yet forge a shared destiny among the stars. The myths had become reality, and reality had proven stranger and ultimately more hopeful than any myth could have predicted.